Disclaimer: in this video I talk about miscarriage, so if this is sensitive to you, please skip this video. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christelle, and I thought I would do something a little bit different today and talk about my personal journey that I've had with cancer. I discovered I had kidney cancer in 2016, but I think my symptoms started in 2014. I was pregnant with my first, and I was under the care of midwives. My blood pressure started going up midway through the pregnancy. At first, they thought, oh, it's just stress from the pregnancy, stress from work, stress from my husband. And then the blood pressure wasn't going down, so they started getting a little bit concerned. It wasn't dangerously high, but being that I was 40 when I was pregnant and having high blood pressure, that put me as a high-risk pregnancy. I was always planning on having my child in a hospital just for the reason of being 40 and having a baby. So home birth wasn't something on my radar at that age. They had to now pass on the care to an OB because I was high risk, but I really, really wanted the midwife. So the OB just was on standby that day in the birthing room. My blood pressure got to a dangerous high level during birth, and they were really concerned. Of course, when you're in that moment, you don't think about anything else but having a healthy, safe delivery. And everything turned out great, other than my daughter did have breathing problems at birth, but that had nothing to do with my condition. Fast forward to 2016, it was a year and a half later, and I wanted to wean off breastfeeding. So weaning off breastfeeding, I kind of knew that I was going to put on some weight because of hormones, and I did start putting on quite a bit of weight on my belly. Now, I'm an apple body shape, so I always put on weight on my stomach. It's just the first place that it goes. So I didn't really question anything about it. I just figured it's hormones. I was doing lots of walking at the time. I had a dog. I was eating fairly clean. But, I was super tired all the time, which I figured is because I was an older mom. I had a baby, so I figured just sleep deprivation was the issue. And my stomach kept getting bigger. My weight was increasing a little bit, but nothing too alarming. But people started noticing at work that I had a big belly, so they started asking, when are you due? I didn't know you're pregnant again. Being asked pregnant when I'm not is not something new in my life. I've always been asked because, again, apple body shapes carry their weight in their stomach. So I was insulted. Figured, okay, I really need to start dieting and exercising. I told people, well, I just finished breastfeeding, so I'm gaining weight now. Then I actually did get pregnant. And it was a surprise because we weren't trying, and it took us 2 years to get pregnant with the first. So we didn't think it was going to be easy to get pregnant again. So we were pretty thrilled, but we wanted to keep it quiet until we went through the first trimester, and then we could start telling people. At the 8-week mark, I did start cramping and spotting. And with my first, I also bled for a week around the 8-week mark. I went and got that checked out, and it turned out it was something called a subchorionic hemorrhage, when the egg detaches from the uterus and implants somewhere else. It so happened it happened around the cervix, so the blood was coming out, but this is not an abnormal thing to happen. So we thought maybe that was just what was happening the second time. But there was a lot more cramping, it was a lot more intense, and I had a really strong feeling it wasn't the same thing. So I told my husband that there was a chance we were losing this baby. We were to fly out to Saskatoon the next day. We were living in BC. My cousin was getting married in Saskatoon, and we were to take a flight with my daughter, and I was so thrilled to be going because no one had met my daughter before. Only my mom and my sister, and no one else has ever seen her through other than FaceTime. So I was very stoked to bring her there, have everyone meet her. I was very excited, and I told my husband, I need to make sure that I need to know what's going on. I need to know if we're losing this baby, if it's just a subchorionic hemorrhage, we want to get it checked out. So my husband was packing for the trip the next day. My daughter was already sleeping. It was late at night, and I went to the hospital by myself. And the doctor that I had said it was a possibility. There was an ancient ultrasound machine that he was using. He said he didn't know how to use it. He didn't know how to work the machine, and it was very old. Obviously, there was no ultrasound technicians working late at night. So he said, I'm just gonna do my best and see if I can see anything. Couldn't see anything. So he said, you need to call tomorrow. And I said, well, I'm gonna be gone. I'm flying to Saskatoon, and he wouldn't allow me to fly with a possible miscarriage. So that just ripped my soul apart because I wanted more than anything for my family to meet my daughter. So I told my husband when I got home, we couldn't go. I had to wait for an ultrasound, and we were all devastated. My sister was supposed to fly with us, so she went without us. She was very upset, and she asked, like, why did this have to happen now? And I said, good question. I don't know. I called all day to get that ultrasound, and they weren't calling me back. They finally called me back at the end of the day, and they said, we can't get you in for 10 days. I had a dating ultrasound for a week from then, so there was no point waiting for that appointment. So I said, forget it. Told my sister, she's like, just come out here. She used her air miles, flew us out, and something told me to bring my dating requisition. And it dawned on me that I have a cousin and an aunt that works in ultrasound in Saskatoon, and I can just use my dating requisition and get one done there. So that's what I did. Took my requisition, went and got my ultrasound the next day after we landed. She was doing an external ultrasound, couldn't see anything. She had to do an internal ultrasound, confirmed I did lose the baby. And she was then sweeping through my kidneys and my liver area, and she said that's just a routine thing they do in Saskatoon. They always check your liver and kidneys every time you go for an ultrasound, no matter what. BC doesn't do that. Whatever you go for an ultrasound, whatever the doctor writes on the requisition, that's all they're checking. They don't check anything else. So this is just a precautionary thing that Saskatchewan does. I can't say maybe all of Saskatchewan, but for sure Saskatoon, that's just what they do. So I thought, okay, whatever, just check it out. And she spent a lot of time on the left-hand side. And at first I was thinking it was just standard. But then when she went to my right side and it was really quick sweep and nothing, I knew she found something on my left side. So when we were finished, I asked her if everything was okay on the left side of my kidney there. And she said, you need to call your doctor. I can't tell you anything. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to be in Saskatoon for the weekend. I'm not going to be home. And then she goes, well, you could always see a doctor out here if you want, but at least call your doctor tomorrow. So I knew something was up. Something serious was happening. So I went to the car. My mom was waiting for me, and I told her that I lost the baby, but they found something on my kidney. And my mom's face just dropped. My mom had kidney cancer probably 10 years prior, and she went through surgery. She luckily got to keep her kidney, but they were monitoring a spot and they caught it right away. So we were in a bit of a shock. And the rest of that weekend, I was a little bit numb to the fact that I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what my future held. I didn't know if I was dying, if it's just a cyst maybe. I didn't know anything. So I was able to get a hold of my doctor. He told me, get in right away when you get back, and I did. My husband, my daughter, and I, we all went to the doctor right away, gave me a big hug. He gave me his condolences for losing the baby. And I started asking him about, when can we start trying again? This was really exciting that we got pregnant so easily. And he said that we needed to look at something else first. And then he told me that they found a mass on my left kidney. And he told me that it was about a 15 by 12 centimeter mass. And I thought maybe he just said it wrong. And I corrected him and I said, you mean millimeters, right? And he said, no, centimeters. At that moment, I felt like a shield just went over me. And anything he had said after that, it was like muffled sound, almost like the sound of Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 wah. That's all I heard. I couldn't make out any word. And I thought, well, maybe it's a cyst. So I asked him that, and he said no. So the next step was to get a urologist, go for a CT scan, go for blood work. I had gone home that day in complete shock, and it was really hard for the next few weeks just getting through day-to-day life. It was really hard being alone, playing with my daughter. We would play blocks, and I'm on the floor playing with her, and I started building with the blocks the size of what my tumor would be inside of me. And I just started bawling. I was so scared and terrified. And it was at that point that I no longer felt like I was living in the present moment. I was always in the future. What did my future look like? Was I dying? Had it spread? Like a tumor that big, for sure it spread. I didn't know what my possibilities were of seeing my daughter grow up. The thought just terrified me. She was only a year and a half, and I wanted so much to be a mom, and it took me a long time to become a mom. And then I thought that's all going to go away because I had this thing growing inside me. So it was really, really tough time. I went to the urologist and she did the CT scan. The blood work came up fine. She saw no markers of cancer. So that was really reassuring. She said with the CT scan, there was a large mass. She showed me what my kidney looked like. She said, we're going to have to remove the kidney. It's just so deformed. Even though the kidney function was perfectly fine, she said it needed to go. I was really upset about that because I really wanted my kidney. I felt like losing a kidney, I would lose a part of me. But she said the markers on the tumor looked like it was a benign growth. There was little to no blood flow going to the tumor. There was a star-like scar on there. She said that was an indication of a benign tumor. Oh, that felt so good. I felt so much relief. I started smiling again. I started, enjoying life a little bit more again, thinking, okay, I'm not dying. This is just a benign tumor. It's just gonna have to be removed. It sucks I'm losing my kidney, but it needs to go. So I started making a joke about it and making light of the fact that I was carrying a mess, and I named it Pablo. Probably because I was watching Pablo Escobar at the time, but I decided to name my little friend I was carrying around because he was a part of me as well. So when people ask me, when are you due? Then I would say, oh, I'm having my surgery at the end of September and I'm birthing a tumor, not a baby. And their faces would just drop. And I'm like, well, serves you right for asking, right? I had the surgery. Surgery went amazingly well. She did a laparoscopic surgery and took out the mass and the kidney through my abdomen, which was the biggest mass she's ever taken out that way. Usually they do a side back incision. The healing for a back takes much longer. It's much more severe. The pain is worse. I had a lot of pain with my surgery. It was only mainly nerve pain that was killing me. And they can't give you any medication for nerve pain. I asked the doctors and nurses and they said they have nothing to give. So I had to go alternative route, and I found a homeopathic remedy called Hypericum Perfortum. You can get it at any health food store, get it on Amazon, but it's little pellets, homeopathic pellets, and it really helped my nerve pain. Within 3 days, my nerve pain was gone. And I couldn't live with this nerve pain. It was so excruciating. I couldn't stand up straight in the shower. I basically was hunched over because anytime I stood up straight, it felt like my skin was ripping apart. That was just the nerves. I'd always have it on hand just in case I get any other kind of nerve pain. It's really good for that. 2 weeks later, I went for my follow-up with my doctor. And she was checking the incisions, making sure nothing was infected. Everything was healing beautifully. She said everything looked really good. She said the biopsy came back from the tumor, and nonchalantly she said it came back as cancer. I couldn't believe that she said it. And she said it's called chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. My mom had chromophobe 10 years prior, and chromophobe is not supposed to be a hereditary cancer. So they couldn't explain why I got the same cancer. I went to a hereditary doctor. They were doing some research about it, and they said the only thing they can think of is it was possibly environmental. So we lived on an acreage for a number of years. My parents would spray Roundup and pesticides in the trees and the grass and stuff. And, we were told to close the windows, close the doors, and we did. We stayed inside. But, it was summer, so we probably had a window open. We're breathing this in. And that's all they can think of is why maybe we had the same one. I was very grateful that they removed my kidney because I didn't want any trace of cancer cells. And I asked them what the next step was. Chromophobe only works for surgery. You can't get chemo or radiation. I was very grateful for that because those were routes I didn't want to have to take. So I was happy that I didn't have to do that. However, it could have possibly spread. The thing they do next is chest x-rays, and they do blood work to make sure the remaining kidney is still functioning properly. So I still go for routine work every year. They don't do anything else. So I asked, What if it spreads? What if it went to the liver? What if it went to the brain, the bones? Those are all possible places that it can spread to. And she said they don't check that unless I have symptoms, but usually by then it's too late. So I asked to get an ultrasound. I'm like, if I'm already getting a chest x-ray and I'm getting blood work, then I would like to get an ultrasound done of my other kidney and my liver every year. She was okay with that. That's not a routine thing that they do, but it's something that made me feel better, that I could sleep at night knowing at least I know my other organs are good. So that's what I do every year. My kids now need to go for an ultrasound of their kidneys 10 years younger from when I was first diagnosed. So when they're 32, they need to start going getting their kidneys checked. Luckily, my siblings are all good. It was just my mom and I. So with the blood pressure, I ignored that sign. Having only one kidney, I have to make sure my blood pressure is regulated. I can't have high blood pressure with one kidney. It's really hard on it. That was probably why my blood pressure didn't go down where it should have been. And we ignored it. My stomach sticking out was another indicator. That tumor was so big, it was pushing out the organs. Being diagnosed with cancer, what this did to me mentally was it's made me terrified of any ache and pain that I've had. I'm thinking that I might have cancer again. I've had panic attacks thinking I'm dying. It's taking me a long time to grieve and go through this process and try to live a life of peace and happiness. It's not easy. I was scared that my daughter was going to grow up without a mom. I ended up getting pregnant again. Part of me believes that the baby that I had, my son, after, was the same baby that I lost. And I often think that maybe that baby purposely miscarried so I can find this tumor. And then he was coming back to me when I was healthy. I just think that that was a possibility. You just never know. But I know it was divine intervention how everything happened, because if I hadn't gotten pregnant, if I hadn't miscarried, if I hadn't had the ultrasound done in Saskatoon, all those things, I would have missed the tumor and I wouldn't be here today. It was because of those events that saved my life. If I had that ultrasound done in BC, they would never have checked my kidney. And it was at that point, the mass was so big that it would have eventually spread. And if surgery is the only answer, what do? What if it went to my brain? Would they cut part of my brain? They could cut part of my liver, but what if it spread dramatically? I was so grateful these things had happened. I knew God was with me, and I knew it was my purpose to stay here, and I had more to do. And I look at life now differently. I'm grateful for every little thing. I'm grateful for my children. I thank God every day for everything. I also feel like part of my purpose is to have this channel, to share information, to empower you with your health, give you some knowledge of things maybe you didn't know about health and wellness. I've made some major changes in my life to prevent cancer from coming back or prevent other future illnesses. So I'm really big on detoxification. I do heavy metal cleanses often. I'm always looking for new ways to detox. I try to eat cleanly as possible. Eating organic is very expensive. I try to choose like the highest foods with pesticides to be very clean and organic. I got rid of my microwave after cancer. We now have a microwave again, but I try not to use it too often. Cleaning supplies, there's a lot of bad chemicals in there. I'm trying to use more vinegar and other types of natural things. Makeup and body care. I don't use perfume anymore. I'm really big on essential oils and herbal medicines. I'm big on homeopathic. So it's kind of had me dive deep more into how to eat and live more cleanly to avoid those toxins. And a lot of it, we can't help it. It's in the air, it's in our water, it's in the food. We just have to do our best. I'm going to be doing a series on here that's going to be showing you some other detoxification protocols that you can do to clean up yourself. But we're all full of toxins. It's just how much can our body take before illness shows up? So we are going to have some kind of tipping point. I just want you to be empowered. I want you to be your own advocate for your health. If you feel like something's wrong, get another opinion. Don't take no for an answer. Doctors don't know everything. Doctors may tell you, oh, it could be this, and they'll give you a drug for your symptom. But then your symptoms is a way of your body telling you something's not right. So I just encourage people to be self-aware, be your own advocate, look for answers, and don't stop until you're satisfied. Life is precious. So I just wanted to share that story with you and just give you a little tidbit into my life and what I've been through. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.